The topic of this session is leadership for flourishing. How do we lead to optimize individual and collective flourishing? Well, for one thing, what it means is that uh, in this development we have gone through of polarity by polarity, they build on one another. And these are some core qualities that have virtues related to them. They all have a still point running through them. And so as one leads, in a sense, one needs to transcend everything and include everything so that one encompasses and is aware of and is in touch with all of these polar dynamics and with the still point virtues, the virtues of being, the virtues of becoming, these qualities of attitude and these qualities of doing and these virtues of doing and the virtues of these polar virtues that arise out of them. And so it's a incremental and transcending and including process that we go through as we grow and we work with the tensions in the world and find a spiritual centeredness throughout our being that we include and embrace in a healthy way, in an integrated way, with awareness and love and wisdom and full functionality and spontaneity of coming out of that still place, and with this quality of abundance and trust and peacefulness. And so you take all of these things into account when you are leading in a way that will optimize flourishing for yourself and others. And this IPP series of polarities are just a good couple of handful of polar dynamics and virtues and spiritual centered elements that are foundational to individual and collective flourishing. But there are many other elements as well in that. And as a leader, that's what you want to take into account as best you can and be as deep and intuitive, as wise and compassionate as you can be in every moment in terms of how to optimize individual and collective flourishing. But at the same time, this is a polarity as well. If there's leadership, there's followership, leading and following. And so it's really interesting, particularly in our Western culture, there's such a bias towards leading. I mean, you can scan offerings from consulting groups and self-development groups about leadership. How many classes have you seen about how to be a good follower? You know, they don't exist. And yet the quality of following is absolutely as important as leading. And in any given moment, say, for instance, you have an organizational assignment as a leader, you're leading a battalion and you run into, in a conflict situation, nothing ever happens the way anything is planned. Can you recognize who has the best skill set to maybe accomplish something that they can lead out for the group, for instance? So it's a very fluid and dynamic thing. And yet, even the framing of leadership and followership is pretty concrete, and we could spend a lot of time just exploring the rich dynamics of that. We've moved it to a little bit of a higher, more subtle dynamic of facilitation and inquiry, where the leader role is less, hey, follow me, this is what everybody should do, and more, even within the multiplicity within yourself or the multiplicity of your collective, playing a facilitating role to harvest the collective wisdom that's there. And in its deepest sense, what's inspiring, what can we recognize, what's emerging that hadn't even occurred before in this moment because we're present. And that creates an endless environment of inquiry and facilitation and inquiry. And you might have an organizational role as the leader, but maybe in any given moment, the most that your responsibility really is to recognize the collective wisdom that's emerging rather than say, this is my wisdom or I've decided what to do. And in an environment that you might call co-hosting or co-facilitating, it's less about leadership in the traditional sense as you collectively come together and you inquire together in terms of what your direction is, what your path is. And and so by definition, they are moving together and they are mixing around. And when they come together, when the still point comes together, there's nothing more to do. The last session we had a quality of discerning awareness. What is it? What are our values? How do we judge things? How do we have integrity? And then this leadership and follower facilitation inquiry is about moving towards finding a sense of meaning and direction, so that you are leading the way or you are following the path, and you're in a process doing that. But when you reach this still point, the need for that is gone. The still point is to, in this moment, to be completely fulfilled. Even as in this prior polarity of alignment and deviation, there was a wholeness there. In this place, there's a place of absolute fulfillment in this moment. I'm absolutely fulfilled. And I'd like to invite that quality from within you to come forward, and let's just dwell in that quality. Let's be that quality of deep, transcendent fulfillment. Nothing to be attained in this moment. Every short and long-term goal is irrelevant, because in this moment, there is the fullness of absolute fulfillment. Tied so deeply to this quality of wholeness. Feel the beauty, the completeness of this place, the peacefulness, the wholeness, the trust that you can find from this place. That deep trust that one has in the absolute. What's coming up for you right now? From this place, from this quality that is always here. we come from this place of being fulfilled in this moment, of feeling totally fulfilled, that in a paradoxical way, with all of these still points of all of these virtues of being there are so full, but they are completely empty, in the sense that you're open to your deepest source of wisdom and compassion and creativity. You might summarize that as inspiration. And so in any difficult situation, and you're in a position of leader or followership, or being in this process of facilitation and inquiry within yourself or with others, you have an opportunity to be inspired, to move beyond all of the accumulation of your skill set and your experience and everything else, all of which is important, but nevertheless, to have an intuition in the moment and be inspired and creative beyond the capacity of your thinking mind, to move in the right direction, to be sure you are on that path that's already grounded in fulfillment and wholeness, and to see more clearly what it was in terms of what was happening, in terms of leading and following and facilitation and inquiry. It might have just been a little bit off. That was a little bit of seeking that hadn't quite touched into the source of inspiration. This is it. This is in this moment. This is the best judgment we can find in this moment to be on this path together, to be following together, to be leading together. And so we have an opportunity to be inspired leaders in this overall quality of meaning of leading and following and facilitation inquiry, to be inspired. And also to realize that mistakes are going to be made, and we're always course correcting, and we're trying to be on the path together, and to recognize that everybody's in that situation. And the virtue of doing that comes out of this place of wholeness and fulfillment is being non-judgmental. Just like in the last polarity, it was being absolutely forgiving. Be absolutely non-judgmental. Everybody's on the path. Everybody's working at things. And even as we come from a place where we can be inspired and come from a place of peacefulness and wholeness and being fulfilled, at the same time, we have the relative side of things where we're working on things and we're working on things. And they always have to, this absolute and the relative, they have to come together and work together. And when you come from this place of fulfillment and wholeness, you can see that everybody's struggling, everybody makes mistakes. And there's such a relief if you can learn to be non-judgmental. Saw a little card the other day that said, friends don't judge one another, they just get together and judge everybody else. And it's hard not to do that, and because it's really talking about being judgmental a little too much. Doesn't mean not having judgment, but wait a minute, that virtue of doing that's not being non-judgmental, the polarity that comes out of that is judgment and no judgment. You have judgment and you have no judgment. And so what that means is, and it's fun because they're paradoxical and they don't seem to make logical sense. But when you're non-judgmental, it doesn't mean that you don't have judgment. It doesn't mean that you don't have discriminating awareness. It doesn't mean that you don't have the wisdom of your whole life experience to kind of see what's going on, particularly if you're present and coming from this place of wholeness and fullness and fulfillment. You can make great judgments, but not but at the same time, having no judgment in a totally forgiving way about every situation. To have judgment and to have no judgment in a judgmental sensibility. And that's fun to play with, and it's an important practice. I think the reason that card is so funny, we're great friends. We don't judge each other. We just get together and judge everybody else. It's so funny because it's true. It's what we do so often. At least a lot of us. At least I know I can fall into that trap. And but if we can be forgiving and not judgmental, if we can come from a place of fulfillment and inspiration, and be in a process of facilitation and inquiry, then leadership for flourishing includes all of that. Leadership for flourishing includes followership for flourishing. It includes being in the process for flourishing. It includes being in the dynamic of an endless inquiry, coming from a place of wholeness and fulfillment, and being present and intuitive and using our best judgment. But the beautiful thing is, it comes from a place where you can hold all of this, the absolute and the relative, and the entire leader-follower dynamic, and facilitate that beautifully so that you can use those qualities as needed as they come up according to your assigned position, or hopefully, ideally, according to in the moment, there's flexibility to collectively recognize who might be our leader in the situation, or what is this emergent wisdom that we can all see and we can all follow together, or we can all lead out on. And so this is a beautiful exploratory area to explore the wisdom of leadership for flourishing in this paradoxical, beautiful, dynamic, absolute, relative way that creates enormous opportunities for us in life to endlessly find meaning in life, pursuing those things that are greater than ourselves and are related to the most important things in our lives. Thank you.